And
I am yeah.
you know his name?
No. Winston.
Okay. Welcome everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming tonight. I know the weather is the weather has turned a lot of people off coming out of their homes. So we're going to all be privy to a fantastic discussion, and you guys are going to be able to ask all the questions you want to ask tonight. First of all, I'm going to hand it over to Bill. Bill's actually sponsoring tonight, hosting tonight. So.
Yeah, so I'm an attorney here at Shepherd Mullen, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you for taking the time out, and thank you for the audio. So, have a great evening.
Thanks, Bill. Great guy. So, as well as we've had a very small turnout tonight, which is very irregular, we've also lost two panelists. One, Shua Shen, got stuck in LA, and Jonathan Booth couldn't make it down from San Francisco. So, there's the odds, but we've got a new panelist who's just spontaneously come into the panel, so I'm sure it will still be really great. And I'm going to hand it over to Monette, who's going to moderate the panel. Monette's been working at TokenSoft and has had a lot of experience, so I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you everyone for coming. I know it's a rainy evening, and especially up in the North Bay, there's flooding, etc. So it's actually kind of nice to be down here where it's dry-ish. So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I've been in blockchain for several years now, and I was helping out TokenSoft. I was there for about a year as head of corporate development. We have a token issuance infrastructure platform for people doing fully regulated token issuances. Prior, I have a combination of academic, technical, as well as investment banking expertise. Having done my undergrad and graduate work in computer science and electrical engineering, one of my professors was actually David Chom, who taught me cryptography. For those of you who know who he is, he was the inventor of DigiCash, what's considered to be one of the first digital currencies. Although I didn't really get too into it at the time when I had my opportunity with him as one of my professors, I was involved with globally distributed infrastructure for many years and security, and then moved into corporate and business development and co-founded and ran an investment bank for about 10 years that did M&A and private equity. So I know a little bit about the markets. And so I was excited to see what the progression of where digital currencies and digital securities were going over the last few years. And I'm excited to talk to this panel. After we had the big run-up in 2017 and then a little bit less of a run-up in 2018, we opened up 2018 with a lot of companies continuing to do security token offerings as well as other ICOs. And then towards the end of 2018, there seemed to be a stall in the number of companies, both domestically as well as internationally, that have been doing issuances. However, during that time period, I've been seeing a real growth in with financial institutions and in capital markets. So I think that's been an interesting movement as well, particularly with debt, asset, and equity-backed issuances. So on that note, I thought maybe we'd go down the panel and everybody could introduce themselves, and then we could start with some questions.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Winston. I'm the co-founder and CEO of REC Group. We're just up the street from here, so decided to come down and share the time with you, and thank you so much for the forum. What we do, essentially, we are exactly the way Minnie described. We actually started off as being relatively traditional Wall Street guys, where we found there's probably $10 to $20 trillion opportunity to structure and securitize very boring but very profitable debt securities that are very inaccessible and extremely illiquid. And my personal background in all this is I started my career at Goldman Sachs in the investment banking division. And I moved on to the hedge fund role first with at .72 Asset Management, and lately I was a partner at Hollis Advisors, which is a $3 billion fund in New York. And when we saw this opportunity, we viewed that there's many ways we could have gone about this, and we chose to essentially explore blockchain as a technology, even at first internally, while maintaining sort of all the SEC compliance that is required for the outside, because we believe that potentially this is the next generation type of software, and that it potentially gives us a huge edge over others. So that's kind of our company in a nutshell.
What is your last name?
Fang.
Yes.
F-E-N-G.
Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sherry Liu, and I'm the partner of Outpost Capital. We based in San Francisco, focusing on early stage frontier technology. We're talking about frontier technology, like we invested in the past, including AR, VR, gaming, and FinTech, blockchain for sure, but a lot of equity deals like the past. In the consumer, we are looking at all different areas to diversify our risks for the portfolios. And I'm very happy to be here, share this very interesting, talking with you guys about the blockchain development and our vision about blockchain. We believe, there's a lot of opportunity right now in the markets, for blockchain investments. So yeah, we'd love to hear more other panels in a view about this.
Hi, I'm Jeff Dorman. I am a partner and portfolio manager at Arca, which is a Los Angeles-based asset management firm focused on crypto and blockchain investments. We basically split our company into two divisions, one of which is taking advantage of crypto as an asset class, where we have alternative fund vehicles that invest in digital assets as well as into the equities of blockchain-based companies. And we also have, on the other side of our business, a product innovation arm, which is designed to help use blockchain as an infrastructure and as a wrapper to potentially invest in other existing asset classes like equities and debt and other hard assets. Before starting Arca, I have 2 decades of experience in and around asset management. I started as an investment banker at Lehman Brothers. I then was a high yield and distressed trader at Merrill Lynch, and then I went to the buy side and I worked for Citadel and a couple of smaller funds. And then I also left 5 years ago, I left Wall Street to start a FinTech company called Harvest Exchange, where we basically built a content sharing platform, an analytics platform for investment managers. And it was at that time, working with developers all day and every day, really being exposed to open source software and collaboration, that I started to understand why blockchain was so impactful, and ultimately decided to dedicate my career to this innovative space.
Well, thank you for your overview of who you are and who you work for. The first obvious question that comes to mind is if each of you could, or some of you could, give me a overview of what you think the investment outlook is in 2019 for blockchain/DLT technologies.
Sure, I've got the mics, I guess I'll start. I think the easiest thing, honestly, in this space to say with any level of certainty is that the overall size of the market right now, at roughly 150 billion, when you add up the public digital assets as well as the private assets, as well as even the equity in private companies, that is completely understated or way too small relative to the size of the potential of this overall market. I think there's not a lot of things you can say definitively, but I can definitively say that this market size is going to grow. I think the hardest thing when you're thinking about an outlook, though, is if you know the pie is growing, what parts of those pie is going to grow the fastest, or where exactly is the value going to accrue? Is it going to be in the private companies, the service providers and the picks and shovels that are ultimately servicing this industry? Is it going to come into the protocol level and the digital assets that exist, or is it going to be in security tokens and things that really haven't come into light yet but are coming? My personal opinion is that it's too early to necessarily predict, but it's changing so fast that you really have to be dedicated to this and focus on it every day so that you can figure out when that landscape is changing and where it's changing. So, our firm is focused on a little bit of everything right now, but ultimately, like I said, there is no doubt in pretty much anyone's mind who is in this space right now that this is growing, and it's our job right now to figure out which parts of the industry are going to grow the fastest.
So for 2000, I mean, like the past 2-3 years, I think is really like the time for a lot of ICOs, a lot of like crypto projects like to grow really fast. However, I think the business model or the profit model like for ICOs is pretty much it's over the hype right now, and I see the blockchain as a technology is broader, like it should be adopted like broader than like only like crypto coins or stuff. So we believe like right now, like so really we're focusing as a VC firm, like focusing always in technology or underlying technology. So we always leverage our expertise, like in including the industry knowledge about tech companies, and also the economic trends, and a lot of analysis, like including taking consider of the political reasons and stuff. So we believe like 2019, like for blockchain, definitely there are a lot of challenges. For example, like a lot of regulations, like they're still not in the place right now. But at the same time, I see there's a possibility like for a lot of like the APPs to getting to know like the underlying technology and how to use them for their business models like logics. As I can see, a lot of our ecosystem, like one of our portfolio companies called Moac, it's a pretty solid like team based in like Palo Alto. So they have like a very core technology team for like over 20 people with the average year of experience 12 years. So I see they're pretty focusing on the underlying technology instead of like focusing on coin price or stuff like that, like pretty, so they're longer term vision, and also they're helping a lot of business to use blockchain to improve their efficiency, to create the real value for the business, right? To incentivize like the people. Right now, a big problem for a lot of startup companies, no matter it's a blockchain company or no, so they are looking for users. So based on the traditional valuation model, like users is pretty important for the valuation, and also it's the base for evaluate the company. So a lot of companies, they're looking for users. I believe like blockchain is the way to attract a lot of users. Not coin purchasers, or like it's more like daily active users. So I think I see a lot of companies are making efforts doing this. So trying to help more blockchain like companies to grow in the space is our like primary goal right now. So I believe like 2019 is definitely, we're looking at the investment in the space. We're looking at the first thing like are this company gonna deliver real value to the to people who's possibly gonna use this kind of DAPP. Or like, is this company is really working on the developing the technology for blockchain or on the innovation part. And another thing is about regulation. I think regulation is something we're really looking into this year. So we're trying to, really want to, shape the industry, to make it very effective at the same time, like regulated. Yeah.
So we, as a more of a traditional fintech company, are investing heavily our time and resources this year into potentially adopting as much of blockchain technology into our internal processes as possible. As a matter of fact, Sherry mentioned, so we partner with Moac as our technology partners to help us potentially implement that. And our focus is very much on delivering that end customer value. And we do everything we can internally to lower the cost of delivering that value. Which is why we think, regardless of whether you're 2017 or 18 or 19, we believe that we can create the best financial products for as many people in the world as possible. That people can get great passive income from, that are relatively safer, right, than other investments, and that are ultimately backed by real financial underwriting and science. And that's why we're heavily investing our time and resources into exploring this technology to ensure that are we going for the best solution possible that we can deliver in the markets. And from a regulatory standpoint, we totally embrace it, because anyone that survives around a regulatory cleanup are ultimately winners at the end of the day. So from day one, we have our own in-house compliance team, for example, that we've invested heavily in. We have a very strict internal compliance when it comes to KYC and AML, and as well as we check to make sure that we have certain flow back controls of types of securities, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all the things that we care a lot about, and we hope to be long term potentially be the bridge between the traditional world and traditionally what customers and overall what we care about, and how we eventually introduce this technology into the mainstream, if you will.
That's interesting. Given that you're all focused on investing in blockchain companies this year, are there any particular sectors or asset classes that are most interesting to you? And then as a follow-on question, are you investing directly in the companies through traditional financing, or are you investing in tokens?
I will start with this. We focusing more on the equity side instead of a token from the very beginning, because we founded in 2015 before ICO or crypto. So we more like a traditional focused equity fund. I don't see there's any specific area or verticals we're looking at right now, but definitely the best technology, underlying technology. So we're pretty confident about the portfolio company's technology, and they've been very experienced in this whole space. They've been existing for years. It's not new project, not new team. Besides that, we're looking more onto the business logic. So any experienced team with great business model and also user adoption gonna be what we are looking for at this moment. Other than looking for new project white papers at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, we have different fund strategies that have different mandates. So we're investing in some of our strategies, we invest directly into the tokens themselves. Other strategies, we're investing into the equity of blockchain companies. And honestly, this industry moves so fast that we will adapt and morph to where the opportunity is as we see it. And as investors are demanding different risk return profiles. So we stick within our mandates. But with that being said, we are investing pretty much across the crypto and blockchain universe. From a long-term perspective, I think it makes sense to think about themes. Like any new technology, it really comes down to what problem are you solving, right? So what are the industries where blockchain and crypto really are solving a problem? I think that is definitely in the gaming world. It's definitely in healthcare and shipping and logistics. There's certainly themes like that from a long-term perspective that you will see outperformance over longer horizons. But at the same time, in the near term, everything is pretty highly correlated right now as an industry. And there's better ways, in my opinion, to make money in the short term, and that is really more on event-driven investing more so than on thematic investing, right? Anything from distressed ICOs to potentially even activism and M&A within the token space. So we really look at the event-driven space as the most interesting way to get exposure to crypto at this time.
So as I mentioned before, we do not have a mandate to purchase or be directly involved in crypto type of assets. But to give you a sense of if to summarize kind of what we do is, we buy wholesale and we sell retail. We buy complexity and we sell simplicity. We buy illiquidity and we sell liquidity. I mean, those are the major arbitrages that we approach, and they could be asset classes of essentially any type. They could be debt, they could be mezzanine, they could be preferred, they could be common equity, it could be a long-term leasehold, anything, real asset, it could be an IP asset. And the whole point here is that just the variety of things out there are incredible, that are in the real world sort of asset space. They're very hard for people to figure out and very hard to get access to. And so that's where we're still very focused on. That's our bread and butter, and that's why we're looking to the best technology to be able to deliver that.
And I'll even add to that. I mean, it really is hard right now to stick with any one theme or any notion that you think is going to play out over the course of many years. I mean, the joke I always use, especially here in the San Francisco audience, is imagine if Uber was trying to build their company at the same time the car was being invented. Right? It'd be very hard for you to look at Uber and be like, this absolutely makes sense, without knowing how a car is going to work. And that's half the space right now. So you're evaluating what you think is a great opportunity, but that great opportunity is, relies on other things happening that aren't fully vetted and aren't fully developed yet. So, we definitely stick to themes, and there are certainly themes that make more sense today than maybe in the future. But you really have to be nimble right now, and you really have to be able to adapt your mind to what changes, and it's changing so much faster than in anything that I've ever invested in. And I've been doing this for 20 years across fixed income and equities in a variety of different countries and asset classes. So this is definitely a challenging investment environment relative to anything else that I've seen before.
Yeah, you brought up a couple things that are interesting, but also you said across asset classes and across regions. How are you seeing the market evolve domestically as well as internationally? And specifically, if there are certain regions internationally that you think are more interesting than others, we'd be interested in that as well.
So what I observe from the global market, different areas adoptions. So I think for US, definitely Silicon Valley is the best technology. Where is the best technology relying on, right? And at the same time, we think surprisingly Asian countries have a better adoption for a lot of different business models. For example, for blockchain, it's not only the way you sometimes you cannot tell there's a blockchain like the APP or APP, right? But it's the real blockchain project is more like change the way either you, for example, you own your data, right? So for example, you can have the ownership of your private data other than a private company like Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, Google, they own everything of your private data, right? So this kind of thing, is kind of happening in China right now. I see there's a lot of experiments happening. So we build a lot of partnership in China with a lot of big entities, for example, like China Mobile. So we build partnership to help this kind of company or and also we do have ecosystem projects in e-commerce, vertical. So this kind of different enterprises or small business, doesn't matter, but they're looking for, get more people using their application at the same time you kind of have your ownership, for your own data, for example, your behavioral data, how many times you check the websites, you purchase. So this kind of data is supposed to be owned by individuals who do these things in the daily life, other than I would say Google or Facebook, this very big companies, right? So it's I think I believe the real blockchain projects is more focusing on decentralized collaboration and gaining back your ownership of your intangible data. So this kind of adoption I see is better in China because we've been invested a lot in the different areas. For example, e-commerce I mentioned earlier, and also IoT. So this kind of different verticals is building up very fast in China, even though right now in the US, probably you see from the news, sometimes, for example, a couple weeks ago, JP Morgan, they issue their stablecoin. So this sort of development is kind of slower. Actually, in Japan, it's I think a Japanese bank, Misowa Financial Group, they issue their stablecoin earlier. So that's an example. I noted, I observed that in Asian countries, the adoption definitely is earlier than U.S. So I believe for us, how do we leverage this kind of knowledge for the technology in Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and how to leverage our network in China and combine them, to make this happen faster. So this is our goal, as an investor, and also, who's really willing to help our projects growing fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to separate the difference between investing domestically and internationally versus adoption. Right? From an investment standpoint, it really doesn't matter whether you're investing in U.S.-based or international-based companies. In fact, one of the whole tenets of blockchain and the decentralized nature of digital assets is that they are breaking down geographical borders. Right? There really is no difference between investing in a US-based company or investing in an Asian company or European company, the fact that this technology is meant to break that down. And also from an investment standpoint, other than the laws and regulations that are different in terms of protection for investors, again, there's really no difference in our opinion of where the company is based, especially when half the time you're talking to people, whether it's on Twitter or Reddit or other communities that are meant for sharing, you don't even really know where the people are based. So I really don't think it matters that much whether you're focused on US-based or European or Asian or anywhere else in terms of the technology and the investment opportunities. From an adoption standpoint, though, it's quite different, right? I mean, especially if you look just at the cryptocurrencies or the types of digital ledger technology that's being used as a form of money, in countries like the United States, where everybody has access to a bank, or everybody has access to credit card, there's not that sense of urgency or that need really to adopt some of this new technology. Whereas when you go to more emerging countries or places where maybe they have a really depreciating or hyperinflating currency rather, there's a much faster need for this, and there's a much more sense of urgency where they feel like they need to do something differently. Maybe it's different from their government regime or different from their banking regime or whatever. So from an adoption standpoint, I definitely think you're going to see growth overseas faster than you see it in the United States. From an investing standpoint, again, this is meant to be borderless. I mean, this is really breaking down those walls that have existed forever. And I remember back in the banking crisis, right? I mean, in 2008, everyone was focused on the U.S. banks, and it took till 2011 when everyone started focusing on the European banks. So geographic investment theses really differed. I just don't see that happening as much here. I think the same technologies can be built anywhere, and like I said, half the time when you're looking at these things, you're not even really sure where they're domiciled anyway.
Winston, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I 100% agree with my fellow panelists here. And that's our overall kind of philosophy as well, which is we believe the world is flat and will become increasingly flat actually, where the vertical barriers are getting broken down, but the horizontal barriers are beginning to become more firm, if you will, and so that's very important when we look across geographies, because we invest already across geographies. We have operations both here in China, we're building to Southeast Asia, and we sell on a global basis too. And so what we're trying to do is find essentially what is the one common theme, right, like that everyone will be able to adopt to. And so far, still U.S. dollar, right? Dollar is still king around the world. Anyone can get dollars, across borders is still the king. And so that's why we base currently still our products on U.S. dollars. And we hope that through blockchain, we'd be able to make it adoptable or investable eventually in a legal manner by those, for example, like in Argentina or where there is hyperinflation, for example, and this is an asset that they can have access to, and they'd be able to to preserve their life savings on, and also make a relatively good return on. So again, we're very focused on solving the biggest real world problems first, and then we're back solving for what is the best technology, and we internally all have been debating as well about how much is decentralization important versus how much is this just a better way of administering what we otherwise would be, like say using a regular CRM system. So.
Interesting. You hit on a couple points I wanted to ask more questions about, but the first is with relationship to the banks issuing stable coins, the announcement by JP Morgan, but also the fact that there have been other international banks who have essentially taken the lead on this. How do you see Wall Street and the larger financial institutions responding, and how do you think that potentially will impact you one way or another?
Sure, I think there's a strong dichotomy, I'd say right now, in the crypto blockchain world, where you have certain people who are just anti-Wall Street and hate everything involving the banks and think we can immediately get to decentralization because it makes more sense. And then you have the traditional Wall Street people who, a lot of them are saying, I'll never touch blockchain, I don't get it, I don't care about it. The reality is you have to be a little less black and white to be somewhere in between. You have to understand that what's happened for hundreds of years with Wall Street and with finance, some of it works very well, it just needs to be updated, and some of it doesn't make sense, but you're not going to get there overnight. So, some people call ARCA the establishment because we all have Wall Street backgrounds and we embrace this, but we embrace it for a reason. I mean, this is where a lot of the innovation has come from, this is a lot of where ultimately the wealth accumulation comes from, and you need the participation from the big banks and the big wealth managers. I like to point out, like, Wealthfront and Betterment are great examples, right? Wealthfront and Betterment are great technologies, and for a while people thought robo-advising was going to put financial advisors out of business. They're not. It's just good technology that financial advisors can use. You still need some of the incumbents to help shepherd in new technologies. And I think the same thing is true with blockchain. Like, we want to see JP Morgan coin. I think JP Morgan coin ultimately will probably be irrelevant. The analogy I like to use is the internet versus the intranet. JP Morgan coin is the intranet in this example. It probably doesn't have wide range uses, but it's going to help get people excited about blockchain. It's going to help a new wave of consumers use digital ledger technology for the first time, open up a wallet for the first time, understand how to custody their assets for the first time. So it's going to help bring adoption, and ultimately adoption is what matters more than anything right now. So, is any specific bank's project in blockchain or crypto that exciting to me? I don't think on the surface any one of them blows me away, but overall the trend of seeing them getting involved is incredibly important to the overall ecosystem, and I support it 100%.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point about, it's not some like black and white like standpoint. Like, pretty much I think blockchain technology is, as a decentralized application, it should be as adopted as broad as possible. So, like, not only by enterprises or banks or maybe like small business or even some like game developers, like individuals, right? So with this kind of flexibility, so I don't see there's any limitation for any kind of an entity like to stop using it. Like, so for example, like banks can use blockchain to issue like stable coins, which is probably bank which is the best entity to do this, other than any other, because they have a authorization, and also we do believe like if bank would love to use this kind of technology, it can improve their efficiency like within their financial, providing better financial services. So this is also another application for for blockchain. But at the same time, it's not. It's also showing the interests of the traditional banking sectors. Like they would love to, embrace the technology, and they would love to, to use blockchain technology for traditional business. So this is our another focus of our portfolio company as well, because besides just focusing on new business or DAPPs, we also try to build partnership and help traditional industries to improve their efficiency, to solve their pain points. So, for example, last year we co-wrote a book with MIT, stands for Ministry of Information Technology. So in China, so we try to educate people by showing them the real use cases, for different verticals for traditional sectors. For example, energy sector, supply chain management. And all those sectors could use blockchain to solve their problem or improve their efficiency. So this is, I think, a good signal for the whole industry to, take advantages of the blockchain technology I think this is a really good news for everyone who's in this industry or who's interested in this industry as a very early stage. There's a lot of things you can do, you can focus and be part of it. So this is a very exciting thing about blockchain. Yeah.
I think it's probably within JP Morgan's, their management team's fiduciary duties to have a JP Morgan coin, because God forbid if Bank of America comes out with one first and others use it, they'd be left behind by a lot, right? So I think it's about I think all these large companies. That's why Facebook has one themselves, right? They're exploring this. David Marcus is exploring this. AWS has a blockchain box solution. I think all these large companies need to have some kind of a pond, if you will, like foot in this world, just out of their normal responsibility. I think the most important thing is that this is probably very similar to when we saw how internet was adopted, or even more recently how cloud was adopted. It goes through different stages, and to be honest, it's very results driven. If there is adoption, then people will say this is a winning technology. If there's no results, then people will say this is a nice experiment. I think in general, both the media, enterprises, consumers, regulators, even government officials, they're very all backwards looking, and they will narrate what the facts eventually prove. And so we don't know today is what the facts will eventually prove, when we look out 5 or 10 years. So I think it's very important for all of us to take a slightly longer term view even, and say ultimately, what makes one version of this technology inherently better than others? What is the theoretical limits of this versus others, and what is the and because if there's a very big difference, then if it's just a matter of engineering it or throwing enough resources to achieve it, then it will happen. It's just a matter of time. So I think that's the number one question to ask, is the more we dig into this, is it yes or no that this is head and shoulders 10x better than existing solution? And if it is, then it's just a matter of spending money and time on it.
It's actually almost comical if you think about it. I mean, I can send a file instantaneously across the world for free. I can, video chat with anybody across the world, no problem. And yet, JP Morgan and other banks within their own company, 2 separate branches across seas, can't send money and settle it immediately for free. So my first reaction when I heard about JP Morgan coin was, I can't believe this doesn't exist already, given how fluid communication travels. Why can't money travel the same way? And that's obviously one of the core theses behind why blockchain and crypto is so important. But when you really step back and think about the fact that one of the largest institutions in the world can't do this already, I mean, this is a long time coming. I mean, we should be thankful that it's finally here.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to me that this is a problem that's still a problem. The week before, I think I was on a roundtable that was focused on financial institutions and, just the antiquated infrastructures. There were a lot of people on the roundtable who were from financial institutions, and when they talked about their own internal systems, and as well as some of the research that I've been doing over the past year, much of it is still being done manually. And one of the benefits of this obviously is for essentially immediate settlement times once consensus has been reached on the blockchain. So I do think that's very interesting. You made a very good point, Jeff. The other thing I wanted to ask, which we touched on earlier in our conversation, was the regulatory environment. Now that people aren't really, or now that the companies raising capital through token sales has really slowed down, and the number of token issuances has gone back down to a small number. How do you see the regulatory environment impacting blockchain companies as well as this market moving forward? And do you see that as being as settling, or do you think that there's going to be another set of hurdles that they're going to go after? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the U.S. obviously has a dual mandate, right? On the one hand, they want to protect investors, and that's really what all these rules are for. On the other hand, they don't want to slow down technological innovation so that everybody runs to Malta and other countries where there's looser regulation. So it's sort of a slippery slope in what they're trying to do. But the reality is securities law is pretty, as written, applied to most of the tokens that were issued, and most people just weren't following the law. So you could argue that the law needs to be updated, and the SEC and other regulatory bodies are working on figuring out what the right laws are. But the laws existed, and they were pretty clear cut, and most firms just ignored them. And that's why you're starting to see some regulatory action, which ultimately is what slowed down the ICO wave in the first place. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we at ARCA, we just assume everything is a security unless explicitly said otherwise, because the reality is most of them probably are. Now, they can grow out of being a security and ultimately be a utility, and now we're talking about new technology that hasn't existed before, so there's reasons why there's gray areas there. But the reality is, had most firms just stuck to the law as written, there probably wouldn't have been as big of a boom, and wouldn't obviously have been a subsequent crash. And we are where we are now, and now it's the job of companies to be smarter about how they raise money, and it's up to the government to continue to protect investors while also moving quick enough to not stifle innovation.
Yeah, so I mean, like, blockchain is just one of the technology, like, it came out like with not a regulation all in the place. So it's not the first technology, right? It's like, for example, like internet. Like, so when internet first came out, people don't know like what it gonna bring to people. Is it like a lot of sacrifices on your like maybe data privacy? Or people still dealing with this right now with a lot of suit cases with like Facebook and all those big companies. But at the same time, it didn't stop the technology developing or people using this kind of technology right now. So blockchain as the same. So I believe there's definitely regulatory bodies gonna focus on this area, regulate this area to protect people's assets or to protect people's rights. But at the same time, they don't want to stop this revolution, or they don't want to see this technology is they don't want to stop the blockchain's innovation. So I believe as SEC or other regulatory body, they get to know the technology better. For example, if there's like 2 or 3, or we believe there are gonna be like multiple public chain, like gonna be stand out of the crowd, like within maybe 1 year, or at most maybe 2 years. So once this kind of projects are in the place, so like SEC will get to know better about this technology. It's more mature, and so how do they gonna regulate this area? So it's gonna be more clear, like for them, and also we believe like a lot of projects. Unfortunately, like a lot of projects probably gonna be fade away like during this process, but it's good for this whole industry to be more, to have a healthier like regulatory environment to grow faster, like in the future to be adopted like widely by users. Yeah.
Winston, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so what our products are inherently designed to be SEC compliant. And we do that on purpose because we embrace it in the sense that everyone knows that the US SEC is the most strict security regulator in the world. And therefore, the fact that if you can get above that bar, the company, the products become globally appealing because they know that you've been through the regulatory hurdles. And in our mind, we're in the business of pushing out these products in a regulatory compliant manner, and then we work backwards to say, okay, in this framework that it is legal, it is compliant, everyone's having their hands, everyone's happy. Now, what are we going to do from a technology standpoint to get what we want anyways? And which is why we've actually trademarked the term smart security. We don't use it publicly. We don't. We never use the word token in our filings because of the fact that we issue real actual securities. That if you wanted a certificate, we'll mail one to you. Actually, it is not a token. It is not a derivative of an actual security. It is a real security. Now, we at the same time make it. We're making it available in a sense that has all the digital properties, right? That you would want from a token anyways. And so that's why we believe that the regulators are our friends. They're there for a reason. They're there because they set the bar very high for everyone. And we, as a firm, it's in anything, especially in finance or raising capital, trust is the most important thing. Even in a trustless environment, even the ideal trustless environment, trust is still extremely important. And we're happy that everything we do, we believe are on the side of the SEC's, spirit of the law, the spirit of what they want to achieve.
Well, thank you for that, each of you on your insight. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions. So does anyone have a question? I can hand you the mic.
You can just speak up, that's fine.
I've already got the mic though.
All right.
Hi, everybody. Great panel. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to be a microphone hog, so I'll just ask the one that's on the top of my mind right now. Samsung's recent announcement to include wallet was very exciting to me, but I'm curious what you think that impact is going to have for the industry, and specifically with acceleration of virtual currency.
Sure, great question. At the end of the day, most consumers don't care how the sausage is made, and we were talking about this before the panel started, right? So, as fun as it is to educate people and talk about such amazing and innovative and cool technology, most of the world doesn't care. They just want it to work. They want it to be useful. So, when you see consumer products start to implement things that are going to make this easier for people to use and adopt, that's great long term for the entire industry, right? Because it increases adoption. And ultimately what we're talking about here is how fast can you adopt. And while there's a ton of great new, young, innovative companies and projects who have not built a community yet and have not built any real adoption yet, the reality is we need some of the incumbents, like whether those are financial institutions like we already talked about, or whether it's technology companies like a Facebook or an Amazon, or a consumer product company like Samsung. You need the incumbents who already have the consumers, already have the audience, to build some of these things that help people get over their fears of using it, right? So in a perfect world, you're not going to even know you're using blockchain, right? You're just going to open up an app on your phone, and you're going to understand that you have some assets there, and you can use those assets for a variety of different purposes. And that's ultimately what I think this news means, is it's going to slowly get people more comfortable. It may not be by itself, it may not move the needle, but over time, this is what ultimately gets more people comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think this is just like one other example of like blockchain technology have been adopted by enterprises. So we've seen a lot of in the past few years, especially last year, there are a lot of adoptions by enterprises in China, in Korea. Actually, by the time we're talking about this, on the other side of the globe, like there are a lot of partnership like is undergoing building right now. So, for example, I think Huawei also announced that they are going to like produce like first blockchain cell phone. So things like that's gonna happen like very often, like we believe this year as well, because people notice the value of this technology and they want to change. They want to make the change like not overnight, but definitely like by small baby steps. So yeah, so I believe there's a lot of this kind of news coming out this year. So that's why, like as an investor, we believe this is a really good time for us to, look into this industry and get early in this industry as early as possible, and also try to help this kind of technology to grow.
If you want to say anything or not. Okay. Are there any other questions? I think we have one or two more.
Yeah.
Mark?
Hey. So Sherry, you were saying, and I also saw on your Medium post, you were like, there are tons of use cases for blockchain. That seems to be not, I mean, I think there are tons of use cases for investing, right? Because a lot of people I've worked with are investing in lots of stuff. They're making land grab predictions about this will be big and that will be big. But right now, what use cases do you see as being valuable right now? Because I've had this conversation with lots of people and everyone's like, well, it's hard for people to use wallets and there's not a lot of volume, and you look at, App Radar and there are like, 200 people using CryptoKitties. Like there's basically no real volume adoption right now. So I'm interested in what you see as like the big use cases.
Right. So I'm happy that you mentioned about like CryptoKitties. So this is a really, I will say, like interesting game. Attract a lot of people to use it, like to play the game, like in a very short time. And also there's a lot of gambling, like DApps, which build upon like US or like Ethereum platform. So I will say this kind of a project is really the earliest a few projects or kind of project can attract a lot of attention like in a short time. But however, like at the same time, there's a lot of things people probably don't know and don't use right now, like here at this moment in US. But I will see a lot of companies in China, they're doing this. For example, the e-commerce company I just mentioned before. So they're pretty much just a very simple business model. They're sharing discounts, discount information, like within your friend circle. And then by, for example, like one invite you send out, you can get like tons of rewards, like, by sending out all your friends like with this kind of discounted information. So this business model sounds very simple because you just give a very small incentive like to your friends or as a reward, but it attracts a lot more users. At a very early stage of a startup company, user base increasing is very, very valuable to a startup company, and it will give a lot of attraction for the funding for this project to grow bigger, and there's a lot of influence by people. Is actually like a lot of people are actually using this platform to purchase or to share like discount information. So this is just one example of the DAPP like we invested like in China. But at the same time, I saw there's a lot of possibilities for example, like IoT projects. If people want to, a lot of people don't want to give up their information for free. But if you use like incentives to incentivize people to, choose, for example, choose the company you want to sell your data or trade your data for, right? So that's kind of the application also is not not only on the white paper stage, but it's already adopted by a lot of users in other countries. So this is also part of the ecosystem. So I will see a lot of new applications, new business models like will happen here as well, but sooner or later after the technology is more mature. But right now, like I think it's still like rely on the technology maturity. So there's a lot of, for example, problem haven't been solved, but a lot of technology team like they're focusing on solving these problems. The trilemma, the very famous trilemma like problems for blockchain, right? Which is the decentralization and the speed and the security. So so how to solve this trilemma is gonna be the key for how fast the massive adoption is gonna happen.
All right, well, I think we've hit the end of our time. Thank you, everybody on the panel, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it, and all of you for coming. I think the panelists will be around for a few more minutes. We can, if you have additional questions, I'm sorry to get to everybody's question this evening. And again, thank you for making it out tonight with the weather, and good night.
I was thinking that would be a tweet out
Very similar background. Thank you so much for that was great.
Thanks everyone for coming. Sorry we didn't have the timing right, but look forward to seeing you all at next week. Are you doing a pitch? Sorry everyone.
What type of deals like
Excuse me, I'm a bit untogether tonight, you'll have to excuse me. We've actually got a 3-minute pitch, if everyone wouldn't mind just sitting down for a few minutes, and then we can do some
Hi everyone, my name is Stan Klevner. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called AirZeus. We're traditionally a media and services drone company that works with construction companies, commercial enterprises, and real estate companies to fly drones for video and photography. And about 6 months ago, my co-founder and I stumbled upon something called Hyperledger Fabric, which is a tokenless blockchain architecture originally established by the Linux Foundation. And in looking at this technology and realizing that drones are a regulated industry, we kind of stumbled on the fact that we could kind of marry the two ideas and create what we call the aerial data compliance blockchain, where we're storing every photo and video that gets captured on a drone and storing all the compliance information associated with that flight in a blockchain that's then shared amongst the industry. So we're kind of in development of that. We just recently bought Aerials.app, where we hope to develop a dedicated capture app for drones. And so we're raising a seed round of $750K. And if you're interested in investing, please talk to me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And so you're a regular, this is like the third pitch, right?
Yeah, we've been here.
And he's getting better every time he pitches, right? Give him a hand. Okay, so now,
new award over there too. Look at that.
That's a really cool drone.
so we've got 30 minutes now for networking. If you want to just enjoy yourselves and take advantage of the time and maybe check out the drone. Thank you.
Awesome.